Okay, we left off on page 27, halacha test. Kodem shivorech yayin b'chuti atzitzis. Just the mechaber yesterday. Before one says the bracha l'sativ b'tzitzis or batzitzis, one should look at the strings, im hein ksherim, to see if the strings are kosher strings. Kedei shelo yivorech levatolo. This is the obvious question. We have a principle of chazaka. You have it, page 27. We have a principle of chazaka. Yesterday, the tzitzis were kosher. Why should I think today? And he says, if you don't check them, there's a concern, and maybe a bracha levatolo. But if yesterday were kosher, why should I be worried they're not kosher today? A woman didn't menstruate yesterday. Is the husband permitted to have relations with his wife? And it's not a time that she will menstruate. Right? It's possible she may, but you don't have to be concerned. Because she has a cheskes taira. Because she has a presumed status. She's not going to menstruate. So if yesterday the tzitzis were kosher, why should I think they're not kosher? And there's a question of bracha levatolo. So we once discussed many times. The Torah says if you have something that you cannot verify or resolve, you have a right to rely on chazaka. Whether the woman will be a need or not a need. You don't know. So if it's something which is not possible to know, the Torah says you have a right to rely on chazaka. What about a person, we discussed it, Sovig Rabbanan L'Kula. If you're in doubt, or let's say you have a sefer. You can look up the halacha. Say, you know something, I just don't have time for it. It's rabbinical anyway. Whenever you're in doubt regarding rabbinical, you have a right to be lenient. Is that Sovig Rabbanan L'Kula? It has to be a bona fide question. If it's a legitimate question, you can't resolve the question. If it's rabbinical, you have a right to deal with it leniently. But if it's resolvable, it's not a question. There's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch in Hilchos Treifus that, regarding a lung, to determine whether the lung is perforated or not, there's a question how to check it. So there's a question, today the expertise of checking the lung doesn't exist any longer. So therefore, is that called, we're talking about a svek sveka. If you combine multiple svekos, you have a right to deal with it leniently. So the question is, so if people are no longer adept and they don't have that expertise, says, really, it's a suffix. Does that contribute to add a suffix to be a svek sveka to be lenient? That's the discussion. So the Rashba says, das shot emeno das. Just because you're ignorant and you're not adept, that's not a suffix. Literally, because you're a fool. Being a fool, being ignorant, that's not a basis to classify it as a suffix. Therefore, it's not a suffix. So over here, if you could check the strings to make sure that they're all intact. I have chazaka. Open your eyes, check it, and then you say the bracha. Right? So you have no right to rely on chazaka. That's one way to understand the mechaber over here. Another way, it's what David said. How often tzitzis after you daven, tzitzis get caught on a chair. Somebody steps on it, and you may walk away. So it's not unusual that although you checked them yesterday and they were kosher yesterday, since yesterday they may become puzzled. So while you're wearing it, we're not concerned. But regarding a bracha, where there's a chance, and it's not that remote that they don't become puzzled, before you say the bracha, they should be checked. That's the second way. There's a third way to understand it. Under normal circumstances, we say chazaka. But when it comes to say the Shem Hashem, that's another level. To enunciate the Shem Hashem, where it's a question of saying the bracha in the vain because of the tzitzis apostle, it's a bracha levatolo. So because it's a question of bracha levatolo, it takes another level of stringency. Therefore, we say they should be checked before you say the bracha. This is all the reasons. So what's the difference in all the difference? You go to the Yomud, you have a talus in the shul, and let's say you don't say a bracha on that. Well, there's a halacha, you take a talus for an aliyah. For an aliyah, you don't say a bracha. If you go to the Omud, if you go to Omud, let's say there's a question of why you wear a talus. When you go for Ali, it's covered at tzibur. When you put on the talus in the morning, the person comes to shul in the morning, he has tefillin, he doesn't have a talus, he wants to borrow the talus from the shul, or borrow somebody else's talus. Do you have in mind to acquire the talus? Why? Because because a borrowed talus, you don't have to say a bracha. You don't have to say a bracha to borrow a talus. If it's your talus, you have to say a bracha. So since there is a basis to fulfill the mitzvah of tzitzis before you put on your tefillin, therefore you should have in mind when you borrow a talus, whether it's talus of the tzibur or someone else, private talus, and we say that the one who owns the house is agreeable that you should use his talis to fulfill your mitzvah, so therefore you're requiring it there. So therefore you're required to say the bracha. So if the issue is bracha, when there should not be a bracha levatolo, and we don't rely on chazaka, so if you're taking the talis for an ali, you don't have to check the tzitzis before you go up, right? But if it's a question of that it's not unlikely that the strings became puzzle, and let's say you take somebody's talis, even though you may not say a bracha, but factually you may what? You may be wearing a talis of dalit kanfos, which is what? Which is not valid, which is puzzle. You're not permitted to wear it, right? So all these things would be, you have to check the strings even before you put the talis on. But the Mechaber says it's not because we're concerned you're wearing a four-cornered garment without tzitzis. It's kadesh lo yivorech levatola. The emphasis, the focus is it should not be a bracha levatola. It seems from the Mechaber, if not for the bracha levatola issue, you have a right to rely on chazaka. Chazaka would be sufficient, right? What's the doraisa on Shabbos? No. Oh, you mean if you want to leave your house? No, again, you have a right to rely on chazaka. That's chazaka. Here it's only because there's a losisa Shem Hashem. When it comes to the Shem Hashem, to say the name Hashem in vain, we take on, we don't rely on anything but absolute fact. But regarding anything else, you rely on chazaka. Right? It's not a problem.
Well, we discussed what constitutes kosher and not kosher tzitzis.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I skipped something. We didn't do Zion. I'm saying, from the Mechaber, it seems to me that's not the case, right? It's the focus is bracha levatola. You know, I forgot Zion. Because again, this is important. We skipped Zion. We didn't do Zion. We did that. Sorach lafer d'chuti atzitzis emizeh. That before you put your talis on or your tzitzis, you should separate the strings. That all the strings should be separated. Very often they get all tangled, intertwined. You know, years ago, you ever see people, they wash the tzitzis in a washing machine. You know what they look like afterwards? It's like just you barely can separate them, right? Is that, well, all the strings are intact. No, Mechaber says, tzorach lahafid t'chuti atzitzis emizeh. Yeah, it's a tour. There's a remez. Tzitzis, Sadik Yafrit Tzitz Yosef Tomit. Right? Sadik Yafrit Tzitz Yosef. That's the remez. You're at Sadik, you always separate the tzitzis. It's really a pikabola. It's a pikabola. The strings, each string should be distinct and recognized as a separate string. Therefore, they should not be intertwined.
Oh, is it okay for a housekeeper to clean tzitzis, or should you
To wash it, we'll see later. La Alocha cited that the one who should wash your tzitzis should be a Jew, not a goy. Therefore, if you give it to a cleaner to clean your talis, you should have the proprietor should be, the one who works there could be a goy working. But the proprietor, it's considered a Jew, you gave it to be laundered or dry cleaned by a Jew, not a goy. Again, you have no choice, you give it even to a goy. I mean, there's a Gemara tells of her story that there was a person left his talis somewhere, and a prostitute, she found the talis, and she comes to the base measure, she says, who does this belong to? So it looked like he gave her the talis for collateral. She's coming to collect the fig, he left it, or he forgot his talis in the brothel. It says that the Talmud committed suicide. So it was false. I mean, she came, it was a false accusation, but the shame was so great, he took his life. No, he couldn't tolerate the level of embarrassment. You ever see the talis? It says they have now embroidered on the inside of the collar. Okay, so that's how he knew. No difference. Tzitzis. We'll say he speaks about it.
If one knot comes out and someone sits.
What?
If one knot comes out on their tzitzis.
It's not. It's kosher.
They're still yoked to the mitzvah.
100%. Even if all of them, even say a bracha, they become untied. Let's say 50% became but it's still tied to the corner. Double knot.
At what point is someone not yoked with the strings?
We'll see if the strings. If you have one string missing, if one string is missing, that means both sides.
The knots and the wrapping.
It enhances the mitzvah because it's a remez. It represents many things.
So let's say someone is
let's say for example.
On Shabbos,
Shabbos.
very often it comes,
Yeah.
one of them
So you just
opens
leave it
up.
in no matter what
Just
you
leave
call
it.
Yotzei,
Yotzei,
doesn't make
100%.
Right.
Okay. Can you,
Mag Patish, you're in
Sure.
violation of kosher too. Kosher. Let's say it opens, you retie it. It's kosher. Every knot you make is kosher.
what if you just tighten it? Not,
You shouldn't tighten it. It's like a Mag Patish. You're securing it.
But your point.
I mean, you can pull it that it shouldn't open up totally.
Right, right.
But to pull it tightly, you shouldn't pull it tightly.
But the point is, you don't even need to.
No, I
Because
understand.
you're still Yotzei.
No, but it's a hitter.
wondering.
It's a
No, but I'm saying
Yotzei.
on Shabbos, you don't even.
100%,
I wouldn't even
100%.
touch it then.
It's a white check on Shabbos.
How do you say bracha? You can't say it's a bracha levatola.
Uh-huh.
If it's puzzle, you're checking that it should not be puzzle.
Right,
So you see if there's a string missing.
Correct? Well, what about, we
That's the
discussed
natural,
yesterday,
yeah.
we're going to see, what about if one of the strings is torn where it attaches to the corner? Right? So that means all the strings are not attached to the corner. It's puzzle. Okay, let's see the Chos Levavos.
Is it the same thing? When you were like, when we said, what do you have in the morning?
How old are your kids?
You said it yesterday. you
Come
said
to my house.
right.
I'd say 75% of the pair of tzitzis in my house are puzzle.
You still think, look, when you're sleeping, you're not fully alive.
Oh,
You thank God that you're fully alive. You take nothing for
Yes, he can get
granted.
his own.
And if you feel very bad.
Yes,
when
he
you
can get
wake
his
up,
own.
you still say it.
You're still alive.
These are the newer editions.
Exactly. Rabbi, it's very, I would think it's very unusual for tzitzis to be puzzled if it constitutes a string missing. I mean,
No, they get torn if it gets caught. What happens if it detaches from the corner? You could have two strings tearing off at one time. Sometimes you have the whole tzitzis torn off right off the corner. If it really gets, you give it a yank, it tears. Especially when tzitzis get old, you wash them many times. The strings are very weak.
I'm really speaking
And-
about the talus stuff.
I'm not talking about the garment. I'm talking about the tzitzis,
Yeah.
the strings.
Oh, yeah, right.
If the strings are a few years old, they tear much more easily than a new string. They've been washed a few times. The string is not as strong any longer. Okay.